listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God! Give away.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William. Joined today by Derek.
I'm Derek.
And Sean.
Happy 199.
199?
Yeah, episode
Almost
199.
200. Next, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll be
so-
delayed on the 200th process.
Yeah, we might have have a bonus episode and then the 200th episode because I think we'll have new theme music for that too by then maybe. But yeah, so this episode we'll be finishing up our 2018 wrap up. So in the last episode we went through a lot of the big 2018 releases that were in theaters and kind of generally thoughts on it and kind of wrapped it all up. And then this episode we'll go through all the remaining stuff we need to talk about to hit streaming services because there's a lot of it. And then we'll kind of go through like our year-end awards and some of the things we're looking forward to in 2019 since that is coming up soon.
This is maybe more constructive, I think, to go back and listen versus doing the individual awards, maybe. I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, to go back and listen to this, maybe you may get more a comprehensive view of 2018.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Then are like there was good discussions before.
One, two, like,
But sometimes, they'll go around in circles because it's all just opinion based.
yeah. So we'll kick this off by going through the 2018 movies that were big on streaming services or series and stuff like that because there's a lot of streaming stuff. And then we'll kind of go into our personal opinions on the top movies of the year and then go into kind of, narrowing it down to like what was the top movie of the year or what we would award the House of Video Store movie of the year to if we can.
And then personal opinions. stuff.
Yeah, so Netflix had a bunch of movies that came out this year.
And we're probably missing some. This is just ones we've seen, basically.
Yeah, so Netflix, in terms of originals, we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about all these because some of these had their own episodes. So one that wasn't actually on this list, but I remember was The Ritual, which came out early in the year.
Damn it, I forgot about that.
Which
man.
was
I really like that.
the one that was kind of like in the woods, where there's creatures and
I
stuff.
didn't see that. Did you, Derek?
No.
So it's on Netflix. You can check it out. So there was The Ritual.
That would probably be in my top 10, I think.
Yeah,
maybe.
there was Apostle, which was the Dan Stevens, Gareth Evans movie. Is it Evans or Edwards? I always mix those
I
two
think
up.
it might be Evan.
I don't know because one of them directed The Raid and one of them directed like the Godzilla and movie.
It's the one that directed The Raid, I think.
Yeah, but I don't want to get bogged down in that right now at the moment.
Cargo.
Yeah. So Cargo, Veronica.
Cargo was the Martin Freeman zombie film that was like
Based
it
on a
was
short
fun.
film.
I didn't love it as much as some people.
It was based on like a 2013 or 14 short.
Veronica, are we going to be talking about that for any top stuff?
Not in mine.
That was a top supernatural. That was pretty good supernatural. Normally, that's not my favorite thing.
It wasn't.
It is Spanish
bad.
set, quote unquote, based on a true story.
Well, and two,
or true events.
It's a Netflix movie, so it has a wide reach. People can easily watch it. But it's one of the movies where everyone's like, "Oh, this is creepy," and it's about a possession thing. And then inevitably, people will still randomly comment on one of our posts about that from almost a year ago or like 8 months ago or something. People still comment, "I watched it, was crap."
A lot of people, it got a lot of buzz about being the scariest. So
Well,
I think that's probably
yeah.
going to hurt it. But for me, I love the family dynamic. I love the characters that got built into it. I just like seeing films set in different countries, different time periods.
I
set
do
in the 80s.
enjoy
And
seeing stuff from different
was
cultural
this set in
look.
Spain, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
set in Spain in the 80s. Like how many films? I don't know how many films I've seen set in the 80s in Spain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I very much just
different-
appreciate getting a different flavor of supernatural.
Well, it gives you a slice of life from a culture that's not something we see every day.
yeah, so I think that's definitely a notable release of this year that you should watch.
Then Hold the Dark was the Jeremy Saulnier movie that we talked about some on the episodes because Shauna watched it and I watched it. It's a movie I thought was, okay movie. Wasn't anything that to me was like a top movie of the year. I'm more excited to see what Jeremy Saulnier does next. He did part of True Detective Season 3, I think, directing it and stepped away towards the end, but
Reviews on that are good so far, right?
Yeah,
Mostly.
like that seems like it's a return to form. And then Cam was a movie we did an episode on. That was the Cam Girl movie that was about the kind of dark side of the internet and
Which is something I watched recently, and I was very high on it.
So we'll talk about that, I guess,
was
towards your best of stuff.
high on his own supply.
Yep.
Tales from the Hood 2, which was it wasn't like made for Netflix. It was just a movie that got acquired by Netflix. not a movie I think that will stand the test of time the way that the original did. I know some people enjoyed it and thought it was fun. I'm just somebody that doesn't give kind of lower budgeted anthologies a huge pass for having just kind of blah stories and acting and effects.
No movie should get a pass for blah stories because, acting, maybe you can't, maybe you're the best actors available, but story,
You always probably make it.
It just felt like
even with a bad actor, you can.
The
sometimes
original
make a good
Tales
story.
from the Hood. I remember a lot of those stories. What the basis for them was even now.
Yes,
And they're all kind of almost, from what I remember, like morality tales.
Yeah,
and stuff,
and this one it just felt so heavy-handed. Even if you agree with the underlying message, when something's so heavy-handed, it can be tough to kind of overlook that. Cloverfield Paradox hit Netflix. That was a huge hyped-up thing because it had the Super
for
Bowl
6
ad.
hours or for 3 hours until it launched.
It had the like there was rumblings that something was happening, and then Netflix had the commercial for Cloverfield Paradox. It went live on the service that night at midnight, and had millions of views in the first week. But people watched it and were kind of like, "Oh, this is a real mixed bag."
I thought it had some fun stuff, some fun moments, some stuff you've seen before.
Event Horizon, was a
some
heavy
stuff you've seen before,
inspiration,
but
Sunshine.
cast was well enough. It was not a terrible Netflix watch, especially if you're like, okay, what's another layer to the Cloverfield, universe? This kind of blew it open to where they could go in different directions, but also it's the weakest one so far. So maybe they'll just put it on the back
in
burner.
my perspective, it's like the Cloverfield original, great. The one with John Goodman being, and then this one just kind of.
Well, a lot of people thought the 10 Cloverfield Lane with John Goodman and Mary Elizabeth Winstead was better than the original Cloverfield.
But see, I don't, because like that movie, I've watched it several, because it's been on like FX or something a lot lately, and it's like it's okay, but it's like for me, I like the original monster movie, and you watch that, and
You
it's
want a
like,
monster movie, not a
yeah,
little thriller.
I don't want a thinking
Got it.
man's thriller.
Well,
and
it's kind of more like a Twilight Zone episode and a Spielbergian, Hitchcockian sense where it's more about the tension and the set pieces and all that and the suspense than it is the monster.
But I think
But
what
it
they
also wasn't under an hour or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like a Twilight Zone. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
It was very long,
yeah.
but it's kind of like if you give, it's like they had something that was successful, so they had a movie that maybe wouldn't have been as successful, so they threw the Cloverfield name on it to throw all and some attachment in. So people are like, oh, okay, that's the next one, and I don't like that. So it's like,
that
like
turned you off from it.
Yeah, I really like Resident Evil,
As
but
opposed-
just because they have any game ever, it's like, oh well, it's not going to do good, so let's throw it in the Resident Evil
See, and
franchise.
I was more okay with that because if they're just like, oh, the Cloverfield is their brand for just sci-fi concepts that don't have to adhere to any, and they're just making like moderately budgeted movies with that, like I'm okay with that. I think the Cloverfield Paradox, like despite being a big PR move with the release and stuff, I think that the general perception of it did kind of set back that universe going forward.
Yeah.
I think
unless they
shut
want to
the
do a
door.
direct sequel to the original Cloverfield with the monster or something.
Which I think that's what everybody wants, and the bad thing is it has been 10 years.
Well, I think
and
the
they
other-
have not given anybody that yet.
I
It's
think
like, at
the
this
other
point, I don't want it
reason
anymore.
why is to do that in a major way would cost way more than the $18 million budget of the original,
Yeah.
or the whatever 10 or 15 of 10 Cloverfield Lane, and they just don't want to sink $200 million into this franchise based on what they've made so
quit
far.
throwing the name on it and just make stuff that's original.
Well, I mean, I think that's
on
why
its
like
own brand.
Overlord being its own thing didn't help at the box office, but
No, but I don't know if throwing the name Cloverfield. It's like, hey, here's a crappy franchise. Let's throw it. I don't think that would
let's
help
see.
either.
So something that wasn't a Netflix original but was released on Netflix and how most people saw it was Terrifier, which was the Art the Clown like slasher movie. More in the vein of something like Maniac or some of those 80s movies that weren't necessarily... It wasn't like a Friday the 13th.
no, it wasn't
Because
as
it was
fun.
really just a clown walking around killing people who stupidly stood in front of doorways and were in a building.
Like if you're looking for a movie with gore in it, I mean, this checks those boxes. And I maybe was too harsh on it earlier. I've not think it's any better than I did the first time I watched it, but it's just one of those movies. I think you just want a simple concept, gory horror film. This has those elements to it, and it has a somewhat creepy character design. But I do get kind of tired of these like semi-supernatural killers that it's been so overdone at this point that I have no interest in movies like that. I watch them, but again, like they just
So I
are not
watched
my
this
thing.
out of just curiosity because people talked about it, but like this isn't something I'd recommend to a lot of people. Like if somebody's like, man, horror is crap now because there's not enough gore and kills and boobs. It's like, well, just watch this movie.
The way you all talked originally about it, you made me feel like this was probably one of the weakest films you've seen this year. As far as horror, is that true?
For me, yes. It was like I don't want to. I'm trying to be better about it this year than I was like what I talked about. But yes, it was definitely, in my opinion, a weaker horror film because it was originally spawned off of a short, which is great that they got it. But
it was like a short that was in some anthology.
Yeah, and they made it their own. And it's
so the thing I would say the difference is, just to set the stage appropriately, this is a like under $100,000 budgeted movie. This is probably a $20,000 budgeted movie. So it's kudos to them for making it, look and sound and come across well enough that it's on Netflix and that people are watching it and aren't stuck on those elements, because that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to make a movie for, like a $20,000 budget. I have no idea what their budget was. I'm just guessing. If you make a movie like on a $20,000-$30,000 budget, for it to be on Netflix and for people not to just talk about how it looks or sounds or the technical aspects, that's impressive. So in that element, they did a good job making it look and sound good and be watchable. The issue for me is the story. There's no forward momentum. There's like a bit of a twist with the way like you start off with something. So who is this character? And then when you finally get the twist, it's like, well, I didn't really care about anybody, so none of this matters. And it's just one of those movies where characters stand around and do stupid stuff. They stand in front of it, they knock somebody out and they walk 3 feet, stand in a doorway and expect them not to come after them. There's just all this stuff like that. So it's all those elements from those older movies that used to do that.
It's a weaker movie. I think it's fair to say that.
So I think it's just fair to say, though, that like it's a lower budgeted movie. It's punching above its weight because it did like the gore stuff effectively. But it's a character that in a better story and a better setup is a lot more engaging. But as it is, it's just him kind of just going around and randomly killing people inside of like a house or like a warehouse type deal, with characters acting kind of not intelligently. Castlevania Season 2.
Well, I got TV down at the bottom. You want to do TV after we do the rest of the movies?
Okay, yeah, we can do that. We said The Rich already. So then there was other stuff on other services that came out. So Victor Crowley was the newest movie in the Hatchet series, which have we done any of those yet?
I don't think so.
I think I've talked about
because I've
some of
only
them.
seen the first one and I've watched it once a long time ago.
Yeah, so that was the newest movie in that series. Listening to like the podcast, The Movie Crypt with like Adam Green and Joe Lynch. Apparently, like it was shot in like not much time, like less than like 14 days. It was shot like in a very tight schedule and like a tight budget. And the fact that it's mostly centered around like an airplane fuselage after like a wreck or something, like you can see where it was kind of constrained and how they had to quickly do it. I remember it being like enjoyable, but like those movies aren't my favorites by any means. And I think it's just interesting listening to their podcast and hearing like you would think a series that's had 3 movies that's made good money on video and for everybody involved except for the directors and the people working on it. Like it just sounds like it was such a pain for them to even get this made, and they had to constrain the budget down. Like as the movies went on, the budgets got lower, which is usually how that works. But especially if like the first one's successful, you think that you throw a little bit more at the second one. But it's just not the way that works and all that. So like the fact that they were able to get it made with such like a tight timeline and restrictions was impressive. But if somebody wasn't a fan of the prior movies, it's really not something I recommend you go pick up and grab. Like if you haven't,
that's not streaming free anywhere, right?
No,
I didn't think
because they initially did like a movie tour where they took it around and toured, because that's one way to control the distribution and not let it get pirated and sell tickets in theaters and stuff. And then it went to like video on demand and disc purchase. Now bought on Amazon. And then kind of related mayhem that I think have been at film festivals prior to 2018, but hit Shudder in 2018. And that
what do you think about that one?
I enjoyed it. I mean, it had Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead and Samara Weaving, who was on Ash vs. Evil Dead. I thought it was, a fun movie. It was similar in concept to the Belko experiment, like people in an office building kill people. But there was a little bit different narrative.
I thought it was okay. I was hoping for a little bit more from it. It did feel like it was just, I don't know. It felt like a little bit of an obvious, like, here's this, I don't know, unabashed twist on the corporate world. And, I don't know. It was fine, but There just wasn't enough there for me to really
Well, and something
care that much about what was happening.
Something that I think that the movie suffered from is something that a lot of movies, I'm trying to remember what era it was, the kind of like main character snarkily narrating to some extent, and all that stuff. Like, what was it? Movie Wanted? Like James McAvoy did that.
Yeah, I didn't like them.
Throwing shade on Wanted from 10 years ago, but like I remember enjoying that movie enough. Like
the
Wanted.
Curved Bullet movie.
Yeah,
But
I never saw it, but
it just felt like a lot.
They made a game.
It felt like a lot of movies at a certain era kind of had the snarkily narrated movie
narration
and stuff like that. So like I thought Mayhem was, it was okay. It was
it
fine.
wasn't terrible, but I just, it was a little forgettable.
Yeah, so it wasn't like anything that I put in my top 10, but like I enjoyed it enough. Then we talked about Demon House already. Tragedy Girls was something that I'm trying to remember when that came out. Like I think it was finished in 2016 or something. But it
Shot here in Kentucky, right?
Yeah, it was shot mostly in Kentucky, and I think some people we knew were involved, like in extras or stunts or something.
Is it meta or is it just,
it was on Hulu is where I watched it.
Yeah, is it a meta film or is it more just I don't know, it's definitely self-aware. It's two girls that are kind of obsessed with true crime, right? Or just murders, serial killers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they kind of are obsessed with them. They're using some of this stuff to get social media likes because they run an account called Tragedy Girls. I thought it was fine. It really hit for some people. It just was okay for me. First, when stuff is very self-aware, and I'm not saying it was it wasn't Scream or anything, but when stuff's that self-aware, it has to really nail it because that is just not an original thing anymore.
Well, and part of the issue was that when you have these characters that are killing people for the social media likes and stuff, and they're played as kind of the good guy, or your protagonist, and there's not really much commentary on it. It just feels
it's not like Heathers, where
it's like Heathers if Christian Slater was the main character and was right.
Yeah.
So it's like, enjoyable enough movie. It was like well done, shot. I mean, it looked professional. I mean, it was, looked like a real movie.
And I may be muddying up some of the themes and all that stuff, but
and it had
the fact that I don't remember it that clearly means it didn't connect with me,
Yeah, well, there's like some jealousy aspect between the characters and stuff. Like,
right.
It was an entertaining enough movie. Like well done enough that it elicited a reaction. I just think that like if you don't side with the main characters at all, then it makes it a little bit harder to like fall in love with it. Summer of '84, which is on Shudder now, as well, and that is a movie that is from the filmmaking trio that made Turbo Kid,
which I wasn't super hot on either. So I didn't. So I have not watched this yet.
Because what was it? Some of the like pull quotes they have are like, it's like Stranger Things meets Rear Window.
Yeah.
And it's where Rich Somner, who was on Mad Men and some other stuff, he was in the What American Summer series, is like one of the lackeys for the rich dudes. So he's a cop and he lives next door to a kid, and there's young kids have been gone missing in that general region and or murdered or missing. And the main kid starts to suspect his neighbor that's a cop is the one who's doing it. And it's just trying to find out if he is or not. And it's set in the 80s, so it kind of has that Stranger Things-ish, Amblin-esque kids with flashlights or bikes or whatever element.
Damn kids with their flashlights and bikes.
The main thing that kind of, to me, was something that was annoying, or not annoying, that took me out of it was the characters did not seem like kids that would actually hang out together.
Yeah.
It seemed like kind of different type of caricatures. And like the girl that's the girl across the street or whatever that's a little bit older and like the hot girl or whatever, her relationship with the main character seemed pretty unrealistic to me as well. It seemed more just kind of like somebody writing that as like their fantasy than reality.
Seems to happen a lot in those types of movies.
And it was entertaining enough, and I understand their constraints and all that stuff. I think that some people who like crap all over Stranger Things or It gave that movie a little bit of kudos because the ending for it is a bit darker.
Yeah.
And goes like a step beyond what any of those movies would have done. But I don't know that it was earned. Like the ending wasn't what a lot of people wanted. And some people probably came away upset, but I think the people are like, oh, Stranger Things is for kids. Like, oh, this is like Stranger Things if you did something bad to somebody actually that's part of the main cast. and to some extent that, you know, is interesting that they did that. They're like not super satisfying, and the way it ended was kind of open-ended and negative. So you can go into it knowing that it's not spoiling what happens
Yeah.
like at all. It's just, to me, I don't
Which
know
does
if
make it more intriguing. You know, that does make it more intriguing. I'd heard that Corey had sent us a message like, "Oh, have y'all seen Summer '84?"
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it, but like, the stuff that happens later on in the film is crazy.
Yeah, so I don't know if I loved it, but like it was enjoyable enough. I understand their constraints. And I am
Yeah.
interested to see what that filmmaking team does going forward. But it's supposed to be set in America. It very clearly does not look like a U.S. neighborhood from the 80s.
It's in America, eh? Right?
Yeah, it was shot in Canada. I mean, part of it's just like the budget constraints.
Yeah.
You don't have you can't do the crane shots of a downtown area where you replace all the cars with era appropriate cars and all that stuff. But yeah, so interesting enough, but not something that I think if you have Shudder, definitely check it out. And if you like the concept of like a little bit lower budgeted, harder edge, Stranger Things, you can check it out. And then let's see. House that Jack Built. So you watched that, right?
Yes,
That's
I just
the new Lars von Trier movie.
watched it last night. I have not really seen any of the other films. I started watching. I can't remember if it was Antichrist or what's the Willem Dafoe one.
Antichrist.
Okay, I started watching that and I was enjoying what I was seeing. I just again dropped off
And
this
there's
year.
Melancholy with Kirsten Dunst.
So I had heard this was self-indulgent. This film was, and I watched it. I like Matt Dillon too. I thought, and I heard his performance was good regardless. He definitely helps carry you through this film. It's 2.5 hours long, so it's a long film. It is broken up in vignettes of, just to give you a little bit of a construct of how the film is laid out and kind of what I think it's about thematically. Because knowing this, I'm like, okay, so it is more interesting. I do maybe enjoy it more or appreciate it more after kind of coming to this, what I assume is a realization. So he is having a discussion with somebody. I don't believe if they name him right away, but if you find out his name, you can kind of figure out maybe where this film is going. But he talks about each time he's murdered somebody or random times he's murdered somebody in different incidences. So he starts out with the first incident of the first time he murdered somebody. And then he kind of goes on to the second one. So it's not like he is trying to construct a murder spree for the police. It's no plot like that. He is he's an engineer who I think wanted to be an architect to build houses, but his mother thought engineering would be more profitable. And he's also OCD. So, but he also is very much into art. So you get this first incident, and then he kind of just goes into talking a lot about way houses are built and architecture and art. And you feel like, okay, this is, does somebody want to give an art lecture here about what they feel in art, or they want to make a movie? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a little bit too much too early in the movie for me. And I was like, okay, I just kind of want to get me into the movie a little bit more. So it does feel like Lars von Trier had a lot to say, and he wants his characters to say it. But Matt Dillon does a great job, and him being OCD adds a lot of humor to it as well. And his character is not necessarily a great killer. So he maybe tries, it's one of those films where you get to go along with the serial killer.
Trial and error.
And he may try to trick somebody by convincing him, say he's a police officer or something, and you see him like fail horribly, and he's like trying to just you can tell he's making up stuff on the fly.
So this is kind of almost reminiscent of I know it's probably vastly different, but still kind of like American Psycho. Because you kind of get to see how he's not very good at it either. And he's OCD and he's very weird.
Yeah,
and stuff.
but he's more of a bumbling. This guy's more bumbling, and he kind of sometimes just lucky.
Yeah.
And it's
he's American Psycho. He throws a chainsaw down the stairwell.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying getting away with some stuff. And so you go along these multiple incidents. So it's not like there's one big through line of, again, police are chasing him and he's trying to, or get away with murder or something like that. It's just about these vignettes, and each one kind of reveals about his character. He kind of talks about, what satisfaction he gets out of certain ones, or they may bring up some societal things of the way hunters bring their trophies and they display their animals and stuff. There's just a lot of just contemplating in this film. And so you feel like, 2.5 hours of that almost. But I did enjoy it because Matt Dillon, he definitely brings enough to keep you entertained through it. Not going to be for everybody, absolutely. But I also kind of afterwards had read a little bit about like, okay, let me just see a little bit about this film. And some people said this was a direct reaction to some of his criticisms about how he treats women as maybe objects in his film. Not in real life, but actors and stuff. And this is very much kind of his response to some of his critics and stuff. And then so I was like, oh, well, thematically, I think the film is maybe about maybe each of these women that Matt Dillon kills in the film is about Lars von Trier making a movie. You know, he's talking about like, okay, you know, granted, they talk about how he sees some of these women as most of them are really annoying. And he's like, well, all the women you're talking about are really annoying. You're not talking about any of the men, but you've killed men too. And he's like, why do you think you're talking about the women? And Matt Dillon's character also talks about how whenever he has just committed murder, they give a great analogy, but he feels the most full. And they illustrate it and show it multiple times so you get the point. And it's really well done. And I don't want to spoil that because, you know, it's nothing genius, but I like the way he kind of lays that out. He feels very full. And then as time goes on, he loses that feeling, but also this other feeling creeps up onto him to where he can't stand it anymore. And it keeps getting stronger and stronger until he murders again. And then he feels full and great again. And I think that's an analogy for him making a film. Like, you know, he has to make a film. The moment he releases the film or finishes it, he feels the best he's ever going to feel. And then that feeling starts to fade away because the film's, you know, he's finished making the film and then he has this other creeping feeling until he's able to make another movie. So I think, you know, that's basically Matt Dillon character. And I guess maybe Lars von Trier's OCD about things. Yeah. So that also drives him crazy. But as he goes along, maybe he's able to deal with that as he makes more movies and stuff. So I really appreciate that, thinking about it that way. And again, as somebody who's not familiar with Lars von Trier's filmography, I probably would have got a lot more from it if I've seen a lot of his films and seen his progression in his career. But if somebody's a big Lars von Trier fan, I can see why this is like one of their favorite films of the year because it is very much about him. I believe about him and his career. So because of that, it definitely bumped it up on me a little bit more, but don't go in expecting a conventional film, you know, but you can't expect a great performance by Matt Dillon. And he's very funny in a lot of things. And he's funny in this, but he's also,
I just expect him to have, because he was kind of a psycho in something about Mary.
It's the exact same thing.
I kind of expect remember he came back with the big fake teeth at the end.
Yeah. Well, you know, in that when he's like trying to play a role and stuff and he's not very good at it also, it's the same thing. And it's like, but now he's trying to murder somebody. Like he actually is like a psycho and he's trying to murder somebody. And there's some great moments in the film. They use some, a specific song from I think the 70s, maybe 80s. That's really good. They use it over and over, and there's like a great funny sequence with that. That's very dark. There's definitely something to this film. I'm not going to say spend $7 to rent it because it is not super conventional, but keep it on your radar. You know, maybe check it out one day. But it is a lot to ask for because it's 2.5 hours, and not going to be a home run with a lot of people.
Yeah. Let's see. Some of the other stuff we were talked about, like Mandy, we can get to more of that.
We talked about that already.
The Domestics was something that some people have been talking about that we didn't get a chance to see. And then just more quickly on Shudder, You Might Be the Killer was one that I watched that had Franz Kranz in it from Cabin in the Woods. And it had, I'm forgetting the name of the actress now, who was on Buffy. Is it?
Allison Hannigan
Allison Hannigan, who's on How I Met Your Mother and Buffy and a bunch of other stuff. Fun movie, kind of in the post Cabin in the Woods, like deconstruction or twist on horror trope type deal. Fun enough movie that, if you have Shudder, check it out for sure. But not something I'd necessarily say you have to go out and watch if you, rent to pay it, VOD like $6 or buy it on disc. But it's worth checking out if you're into kind of like a meta movie that goes in a slightly different direction.
I started watching that, loved how it started it, and then it started spinning its wheels, and then I never returned to it. Because that's what I told you guys. I'm like, hey, I'm really liking how this starts, because I like him a lot, and he really carries the film, but it just kind of starts going in circles.
Then Terrified.
Yeah, Terrified is a...
we got a lot of buzz about being really scary.
Argentina film. I think it has some great effective scares in it. The budget it's not slick like something like Veronica. If you're talking about, because Veronica, I assume is Netflix produced, but this has some very cool stuff, some very original kind of scares and creeps, but also some stuff that is standard genre fare. It feels like it has a lot of good little moments that would make fine enough like Facebook horror short films, like a lot of the stuff we see. Not like, I'm typically the films that are there to scare and do that type of stuff aren't, they don't get under me, and they're not my favorite normally of favorite of the year. But for this types of films, if you look past any shortcomings, I think it's a great watch. And I'm glad I watched it, and I would recommend to somebody who, if I knew they were into those specific types of films, I think it has a lot to offer because it moves well and has some very creepy stuff.
Yeah, and then let's see, the other one was Satan's Slaves on Shudder.
Yep, Indonesian film. I'm only partway through that. I'm definitely going to finish it though. I think it was the highest grossing film there. I believe it was only shot for $150,000, but it still looks pretty good. It's had some great scares also in that. It's when you watch these films, you always think, okay, well, what is the director going to do to make a scare? Because we've seen a million different ghost stories and a different, of stuff creeping in the corner and all that. And this has some good ones that I haven't seen before that are fairly simple and really effective. And it's, it's about, I think, I don't want to reveal kind of where this story is going, but, it's about Satanism, maybe a little bit, but
So kind of like,
but also an innocent family where they didn't bring it on themselves, but maybe somebody else in the family. Anyway, it's enjoyable so far, and I would recommend that from what I've seen, which I'm over halfway finished with that.
All right, and then the last thing we'll go through before we start getting into the awards and stuff is the TV series. So these like kind of cross lines between streaming and cable. But I think all these, if any of us watched them, were on the streaming version of it, not live on TV.
Yeah, because it's very hard for me to watch live TV.
So going through just the ones that just one of us watched. So Castle Rock was the show based on Stephen King's universe that was on Hulu that really wasn't based on any of the stories. It had Easter eggs to some of the stories, like The Shining and other books and stories from Stephen King. It was original story. I think it did a lot of, it started off okay. It did a lot of kind of wheel turning or spinning the wheels where it didn't really move anything forward enough. So to me, that was kind of, at the end, it was kind of a disappointment where it went. I mean, but each season is supposed to be a different story. So it does have the ability in the next season to kind of start fresh and be more engaging. It just felt like they had a mystery they didn't delve enough into and didn't really get you that invested to care in some aspects. So it's an okay show. Like we watched on streaming because it had Hulu and stuff like that, but it wasn't like must watch. We only really finished it because we had spent the time to watch the beginning. Santa Clarita Diet was one that has Drew Barrymore and Timothy Olyphant. I thought the second season a lot better than the first season.
Oh, Timothy Olyphant. Me.
It was just, the zombie comedy show that was kind of
Transformers.
No.
There's there's another white guy
or something.
They're the same people.
So it's a show it's good enough. It's entertaining fare, but it wasn't anything like must watch. And a lot of people liked it more than I did because it's got the comedy bent to it and zombies, which I'm kind of done with zombies.
Did I do that?
So Legion was the FX show that was based on the character from the X-Men comics, but the show was by Noah Hawley, who'd also done Fargo and some other stuff. So very out there show. Stylistically, I really dug this season. The storyline at the end caused a little bit of controversy. So if you enjoyed the first season, definitely recommend sticking with the second season. I don't know, some people might find it too pretentious because there's parts where entire episodes don't really progress the story in a linear fashion whatsoever. It tells you stuff about the characters and it does more character development, but it's by showing side dimensions and parallel dimensions and stuff. And there's a lot of imagery in it that was kind of weird. There was one episode where there's a huge drain stopper in the middle of the desert. So there's some imagery people think are just weird for the sake of being weird. And it doesn't really tell, there is a linear story there to some extent, but it takes a while to get momentum. But I just enjoyed the ride. And I think I'm a lot more open to that on TV series. Especially when there's good performances Dan Stevens is David Haller's really good because he's in The Guest, a bunch of other stuff. Ash vs. Evil Dead. We almost forgot that this happened this year. because they didn't release it in the fall of 2017. They released it like in the early spring or end of winter 2018, and it came to an end. Like I enjoyed the third season.
Mm-hmm. I remember I'm having a hard time thinking of how. Okay, I remember exactly how it ended now.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it in months, but I remember some really good moments from this season. I'm glad we got 3 seasons of that show.
Yeah,
and I'm okay that it's over with.
Yeah. I mean, I think they may have done something a little bit different at the ending if they knew it was ending versus thinking it was be up for renewal. But yeah, I mean,
But the ending is fitting for the ending of the films.
Yeah, I mean, it fits more with like Army of Darkness because all those movies don't give a definitive ending. They open it up into a new possibility that often gets retconned in the next entry. So
or just completely forgotten about.
Yes, we enjoyed.
I think they ended it.
I mean, they ended it well enough. I mean, there's still room to come back and do like a comic or game or something, but.
But as far as closing the storylines on some of the characters and stuff, like it's more of a definitive ending than they've had so far for sure.
Like one day I'll watch 2 and 3. Season 1 to me was so that I just never cared.
Well, I think they really kicked up the amount of things happening in like season 2.
What really turned me off from it is I had to buy another friggin' channel to watch it, and then I got it for only that, so I had to pay a jacked up
seasons
bill.
1 and 2 are on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure when season 3.
I was saying, but to me, that was just the big turnoff for it, so I just never came back to it because I didn't want to have to pay more money to watch just one show and then have to go through all that.
Then there was Sharp Objects, which is the HBO series.
I mean, it's not super hard, horror, but there's some dark stuff in there. It's about some gruesome murders and stuff. So I put that on there just because that was one of my favorite shows this year. Maybe my favorite. I don't know. Was Vice Principal season 2?
I think it was early 2018.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good too. Of course, that's like
dark comedy.
A comedy, but yeah, I just want to recommend Sharp Objects.
Let's see. Then there was Crybaby Devilman. Wasn't that a Netflix?
That was an anime. Yeah, they've done several.
They also had
before.
Castlevania season 2.
Yeah, I liked Crybaby Devilman. I want to watch Castlevania season 2 because I liked the first one.
I wonder how many people are being introduced to anime really through Netflix, having these more.
Yeah, they're putting even more this year, 2019 too.
Let's see. Then something else I watched was Blumhouse's Into the Dark, which is like the monthly anthology series. So there was The Body, Flesh and Blood, Puka, New Year, New You. I haven't dug any of these. I don't know what the deal is. They all feel the same to me in terms of like the budget and the pacing and the setup. Like they all feel like kind of smaller, contained worlds. I think Puka was the best so far. But like the New Year, New You is supposed to be kind of like social media influencers, but it feels like that's the jumping off point. And then beyond that, it's just people running around in a house with knives and stuff. So like a lot of movies, they have this concept that like sets it up and they really abandon that for just standard genre elements. And it feels like that. And people are talking about like, oh, it's about social media. It's like, I didn't really get that. But yeah, and then like Haunting of Hill House, something we'll have a little more to talk about, I'm sure. So now we can go into like what our personal top 5s of the year were, and then we can and then go from there into what we try to come to an agreement on the movie of the year for HBTVS. And
I don't know we're gonna have this. This would be a hard year.
All right, so what do we want to start with, real quick?
Do you want to do?
Let's see if I want to hear. Okay, we don't have to do biggest disappointment, but I was pretty disappointed in Halloween. Predator, I didn't know what to expect.
I would be more disappointed in Predator.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
I can't say Predator. I haven't watched.
Maybe just because, but and when I say disappointed, it's because normally it's because something I love about that thing. So I love Shane Black's movies, and I love David Gordon Green, a lot of his stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. Both those were a bummer because I expected more out of the creators, because I like their stuff so much. Typically. Best surprise movie, it turned out to be much better than expected. I don't know if there was any that was a giant surprise, Well,
I would say the I don't know, like surprise in terms of like movie or series or anything like
this year. I don't think we had the Visit in 2015, and that I think because of M. Night Shyamalan, his track record before that was a surprise to us. This year, I don't think there's anything super surprising. Do you guys think? I mean, Mandy, maybe about
something I'm gonna kind of go off. I really think mine would be the Cam because that was a movie that like I'd heard about. I just happened to watch it. I think New Year's Eve night or whatever, and I was really just kind of blown away by how good it was. It was one of the movies that like I really didn't have much expectations given the plot of it. Yeah. But I think it was just so creepy and shot so well, like the character was relatable enough. I just one of those
Written
movies
by former cam girl.
Yeah, I feel like somebody who understood the world. So to me, it was really effectively done. So that was kind of a surprise to me because that movie could have just been a schlocky sex grab, and it wasn't that. It was much deeper.
Well, it wasn't written by a bunch of dudes who had no insight to the world. And it was just an excuse to get women naked.
And it was just, to me, like, this was a very good story, and it didn't ever have a point where it didn't make sense, and it explained it enough, but then it kept it enough. I really enjoyed it. It'd be my surprise of the year. I was something I wouldn't even think was going to be any good, and I watched it and I was like, man, that's actually...
I don't really have any big surprises. William, you got any big surprises?
I think that, The Haunting of Hill House.
Okay.
Yeah,
because with like Mike Flanagan, like we all, I think at least I acknowledge, like I think he was a good filmmaker, and some of his other work was, were good movies that just didn't connect with me in a huge way. But then just to love The Haunting of Hill House as much as I did was a surprise to me. And then kind of change my opinion on him as a filmmaker. It makes me a lot more excited for his take on Dr. Sleep, which is the kind of follow-up to The Shining.
Well, it showed me that he could do, like, real horror and stuff that I think would fit well in the Shining universe. Because, like, this type of stuff in the Haunted Hill House, some of the imagery was similar to that of The Shining in some elements. So I think... I am really excited to see that. And I do think that was kind of a surprise because, again, it could have just been really bad. And it was actually one of the best things of the year.
So any movies that are a must own, like definitively overall?
Oh, Mission Impossible Fallout.
I was about to say,
that is
I was about to say, well, yeah, that's the obvious choice for me. But anything in horror? What about you, William? You can overall, William, also for you if you want.
Yeah, like in terms of must owns, like some of it's a little bit because like Mandy's on Shudder,
but I'm saying, okay, let's just say if you take in consideration if there's any special features or whatever.
Well, yeah, because the thing that sucks is so much stuff doesn't have much in the way of special features these days.
I think like a must-own for me will be Overlord when it comes out because there's a couple things I would like to see behind the scenes stuff if they show any of it. Like there's this is in the trailers, but you see a talking head. Like I would love to see how that was. I think to me that's a must-own because it was just a great movie.
Yeah,
and it's something that I think you obviously probably hit streaming services, but I just think it's something you should purchase.
It's a movie that I most hope gets a second life through streaming services.
That's the one for me. We don't have an award, but I most likely to recommend to somebody as far as horror film goes because it is an easily recommendable film.
It's movie.
It's not a lot there to turn you off as long as you're okay with horror.
So let's see. So like in terms of like talking about like our overall. But then going into kind of like trying to do a best movie if we can come to an agreement. So my top 5, I went back and forth on some of this stuff, and one of them's kind of a cheat because I'll start at the cheat. So Haunting of Hill House, I put on there. It's not a movie, it's a series, but to me, I just enjoyed that so much, and it was horror, but it was actually like a good series. Not to putting horror down, but it wasn't going after their growth. Like it wasn't American Horror Story where it just kind of goes off the rails and is crazy and just has people getting slaughtered by ghosts left and right. It actually had more of like a thematic purpose, and it kind of has like a big reveal. They're like, oh man, that was kind of like a moment that I think most people had a big reaction to.
It had a big build up.
It had an episode that from a filmmaking perspective was amazing because this hour-long episode was made up of 5 takes, and just to know what it took to do that is ridiculous. And then like one of people's friends on Facebook was one of the stand-in actors. So on that show, they had like the main cast and then like a secondary cast. And for one episode, like the secondary cast that were all like the stand-ins went and practiced for like a month with like the camera crew and stuff to get down the choreography and all the timing and everything. And then the real cast came in and shot it. So one of the guys was like posting like pictures because he was the stand-in, I think, for Luke or the other brother, Steven. And I was like, I thought that was really interesting to see that. So like, to me, that show I really liked. I'll probably rewatch it again because there's like it's a show about ghosts that has ghosts.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like I said, go off the rails, ridiculous ghosts slitting people's throats like American Horror Story and stuff where it's like, come on. So I really liked Haunting of Hill House. It's kind of a cheat because it's a show, but still, like I would rank it as one of my top 5 things that I watch this year, like related to horror. And then, A Quiet Place I put on there because I just thought it was like a very good visceral thrill ride of a movie.
That's probably easy recommend too.
It's one that, had good performances, and I was really liked that they had an actress that was deaf when the character was deaf, and they didn't pull the old Hollywood trope of have Brad Pitt sit in a wheelchair or something, or, like just, get the biggest name you could, because they could have easily went after, one of these like teen stars from a CW show or something versus getting an actress that actually was deaf and then making that, have the representation, and not just because of that. She's a good actress too, and it matched. And even some of the frustrations between like relationships were realistic, because like being around like teens and people and younger kids and stuff for the holidays, you're like, oh, that's why kids don't listen in movies, because in real life they don't.
Yeah.
And then Annihilation was just one that the visuals in it were great, and I just came away thinking about it a lot. I get how that end third act could turn people off, but I still enjoyed it and thought about it and want to rewatch it more than some of the other stuff. And then Overlord, just because I thought it was just overall good thrill ride from beginning to end, because it was a good war movie and a good genre movie all in one. And like the opening part is something I really, if you didn't watch it in theaters, I really recommend watching it on a good sound system. Mm-hmm. And then for the fifth one, I put Mandy. Just because Nicolas Cage going crazy was great. Like Halloween, I think I liked it more than you all. Like I liked that it existed and it got people excited about
I'm fine that it
horror,
exists.
and it got people excited about those franchises and horror movies. And I saw it twice, more because of circumstance than because I loved it so much. Just because our mom wanted to see it, and I was like, well, I like to go to the theater with her. But like it's kind of like an honorable mention. Like I like what it did for horror, but the movie itself, there were issues. But those issues were amplified more by the fact it's like what I would call like a legitimately made movie. It's not sequelitis where you're grading it on a huge curve. It only sticks out so much because you're grading it up against like the best movies of the year, where it falls short compared to a lot of horror sequels that would stand up pretty well, like the franchise sequels.
Yeah.
Yes, that was my top 5.
My top 5 is not that vastly different from you, but I will give mine like in the order that I want them in. Like this is definitively my order of what obviously like I agree with what this is kind of a cheat, but it was just so damn good. There's no way I couldn't have it in the list. It is my favorite horror thing of the year, and it's The Haunting of Hill House. I think everything about that was like expertly done. It's crazy to get a ghost movie with actual ghost in it, because we never get
show.
that. Yeah, a ghost show with actual ghosts in it, or anything at all that has ghosts that actually has them in there, but does it in a way that is cool and creepy, and they don't overdo the ghosts. The ghosts are very subtle, but it is nicely done, and you just don't get that. You either get one, they don't show anything, or two, it's just way over the top.
It's American Horror Story.
Yeah. My second of the year is Mandy, and I just love because there's moments that are kind of like supernatural, Hellraiser-esque. Then you have the revenge element to it, and then you just have crazy Nicolas Cage, and like all that to me, like it is hard to digest the first hour. But I think that, like Sean was saying, that it is necessary to make you feel a certain way about it.
It sets the world up.
It sets the world up, and it sets up Mandy as a character. And I like, too, like she wasn't over-sexualized. She was a strong character. It wasn't like a lot of these revenge movies. So I liked that.
It sets the build-up for the release, too.
Yeah.
So you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then boom.
But she was always a strong character. And a lot of times in these movies, that's not always the case. Overlord's number 3. I loved Overlord. I'm a huge fan of like the weird World War II stuff. This fit the bill. It wasn't as crazy as Frankenstein's Monster,
Frankenstein's
Army, but it was, I think, overall much better film. It had a better cast. It had everything about it. It didn't have
a lot bigger budget.
Now the creatures weren't as cool as in that,
because that was less. The creatures weren't the focus as much.
But it just, I think, like you said, like the thing that I think that film did best is like if it was a straight war movie, it was a good, just pure war movie. If it was only the supernatural, again, it worked just on that on itself alone. But I think that both elements worked so good, like there was no fat in it, and each storyline could have worked independently, but they blended very well, which I think is kind of hard to do sometimes because they get muddled and then they kind of rush stuff or stuff skips out. But it was a pretty good straightforward movie, and it had some really memorable moments in it. Cam, and I kind of talked about that slightly. It was just one of those movies I watched right at the end of the year, but I just think it had such a creepy kind of like. It didn't, not to get into spoilers, but it's like there's another version of her that exists that she's not for sure where it came from. So the movie's like trying to find out that mystery, and you find enough out about it that it's still creepy, but you don't really know what it is.
Yeah, and they don't need to over-explain.
And they don't need to over-explain, and I think that was great. And you had a strong character, and like Sean said, it was from a female director who had been a cam girl.
Or the writer.
Or the writer, sorry. And so it wasn't exploitive. And I think that's the one thing I liked about it the most is I could see this movie very much be written by a man, directed by a man, and being very just boobs the entire movie.
Well, we see so much stuff that's just like coming heavily from the grindhousey
and this
exploitation
could have
angle.
been very much like that.
And it's
it
refreshing
wasn't.
to see because like a lot of times people sell like low budget movies on that as their hallmark, and it's nice to see stuff where it's focused on the story and the character, and to come away thinking about it after the fact is a nice twist to like a lot of these movies, and that's when I enjoy seeing stuff that makes you think.
Yeah, and this one was who would have thought the movie about a cam girl would be a thinker? Because you're so used to things being
Way to have preconceived notions.
No, but you just look at it and it's like
this was not Showgirls.
This was not Showgirls. This was not.
And I thought
exploitive.
about Showgirls afterwards.
And this was not like I could
Well.
very much see this being a grindhouse hostel type movie, and it wasn't that.
Yes,
There was nobody
yes,
on a
that's what you
camera
expect.
getting
So,
dismembered. And
Kevin Smith did a Cam Girl segment for the anthology movie Holidays. This was far better than that.
Yeah. And this was just a little bit different than I thought it was going to be, but this really kind of like, because this to me kind of falls in like the creepypasta, like, stuff, a story you might read on the internet, and it was really cool.
Or Reddit No Sleep.
Yeah,
or
Reddit No
something.
Sleep. And I really liked that. It kind of brought to life, and it was actually really good. And then my fifth and final of the year, which I actually bumped out Bird Box, because that'd just be my honorable mention, was Annihilation. And I think the more I think about that, it not that I necessarily love the ending, but I do think it speaks to me a little bit, especially when we talk about Halloween. Like, you didn't do a crowd pleaser ending. Like, you didn't do what maybe the studio wanted you to do, and I think that makes me feel a little bit better about it. But there's some moments in that movie that just, they've really set up an interesting world. It had a good set of characters, and then there's just some moments in it that I think were some of the best of the year for me. I don't know if anything in horror kind of topped the bear monster, and then there's an alligator earlier in the movie. Then you have like when you see the remnants of where the soldiers were at. Like,
So
all that visually was just so good. That's why it's in my top 5.
Yeah. So Sean.
My top 5, I would go Suspiria. It gets fuzzy. Annihilation, probably. I forgot about Ritual. I really liked Ritual.
Yeah, the ritual.
But maybe because I forgot about it means
Yeah.
I didn't like it as much as I think. I don't know.
It was also early in the year, so it feels like a long time ago.
Like I said, Heredity, I appreciate a lot about that film, but I never felt I don't feel the need to go out and buy that. So I don't know, I don't know what my feelings are totally on that, but I really appreciate that film. Overlord is one. I think I do want to buy that one,
Yeah, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
So that probably does bump it up. So it might be Suspiria, Annihilation, Overlord, and then somewhere around there is maybe Mandy, Hereditary. I know I'm getting number 6 and 7, but The Ritual. I did like A Quiet Place a lot.
Yeah.
Bird Box I like Bird Box more, but Quiet Place, if you're talking about, and even Annihilation isn't like straightforward horror. It's a weird thing, but Quiet Place is just a good, thrilling horror film.
Like I would probably rewatch that than Bird Box. for
Yeah,
sure.
that wasn't. If you're just for rewatchability, I think A Quiet Place would be better.
Yeah,
for sure.
it is.
So yeah, Suspiria is number 1 for me. The bear moment from Annihilation is so awesome, but also there's some moments in Suspiria that are, maybe specifically 1, 2 that I really love. Also,
Well, yeah, there's one scene where it's like two things cross cut
yes,
that stands
I
up
think
there.
it's beautiful. It's one of my most favorite moments
Something
of
that
the
would
year.
be.
So I don't. Yeah, our top film of the year, or let's say top horror thing. I don't think we're not all on the same page because we haven't even seen all the same stuff. Yeah. William is not. He didn't have Suspiria in his top 5. You haven't even seen it. Mm-mm. I mean, honestly, if you guys feel really strongly about Haunting a Hill House, we can just say best horror.
Well, because it's from what it sounds like in terms of things we've all seen that rated highly: Annihilation, Overlord, Mandy.
Yeah.
And then
I
stuff.
like Annihilation a lot.
And then, so you have like those 3 things we all saw. So Suspiria and Hereditary are both movies that I appreciate more than
Yeah.
I like.
That's how I feel about it.
They would still be in a top 10
Yeah.
horror of the year. But to me, it's like I can appreciate them while not really wanting to rewatch.
Yeah.
Because I can understand what Hereditary was and how it worked and how like well put together it was. And with Suspiria, I can respect what they did and how they put it together.
And 2, a lot of people, the performances in Hereditary are great, but I love the performances in Suspiria. Can't wait to turn that film on and just watch them. You know what I mean? Because I think the performances are so good in that film. And yeah, they are not dealing with trauma and having screaming outbursts anything like that really, but I love the performance in that film. I like the music a whole lot, the visuals, just the editing, the pace. That's a movie I just love to put into my eyeballs and I love to listen to.
Stick them right in your eyeballs.
And I've seen it one time, so these lists are all fluid. Next week my list might be a lot different.
They're order fluid.
But for me, that's one that I think I'm gonna maybe put on a lot. Once Nicole can see it, so it doesn't get spoiled. But that's the one I'm gonna have on a lot. So I don't know. We can pick a movie, or I'm okay if you want to say best horror thing, and we can just slightly cop out. But I only watched 2 episodes of Haunting Hill House. I was enjoying it, but it didn't.
It's a
keep
big commitment.
It did. Yeah, that's me. I have commitment issues.
Yeah, because you're
with
talking
TV shows.
you're talking over 10 hours.
So
of
I think we
material.
need to recommend a movie at least also.
Yeah, 'cause I think
if
that-
you guys want to do that, because if somebody does not want to watch a show,
Yeah, I think that because the show is it's 10 episodes, so it's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in. It's a lot of time to put out there. What movie? I mean, because it seemed like the 3 that I think most of us had on our list was.
So it's Annihilation, Overlord, or Mandy.
And to me, I'm gonna go with the one that I think is the universally the most easily watchable. And I think I can enjoy the most on rewatchings is Overlord, because I think if I was gonna sit down, you said you have an hour and a half, 2 hours. What can you watch? As much as I like Annihilation, there's certain parts of it that but I think for me, mine would have to be Overlord.
what about you, William?
I think too though, a difference is looking at that. So Annihilation, I think people are generally aware of it.
Yeah.
And then kind of polarized for or against it.
Yeah.
I think with Mandy, it's kind of similar. People are aware of it and we're either into it or not. I think Overlord is the one I would want people to know about the most, because it's the one people may have not heard about or pay much attention to, or I heard some people talking about I heard this was really bad. It's where did you hear that from? The general consensus I've seen is pretty positive.
Yeah.
But I think it's just there's some general film fans I thought this was going to be Saving Private Ryan.
So, for me, I value a film on also the shelf life, and that will get a lot of rewatches for fun factor. Annihilation, I think, is going to grow over time. You know what I mean? I think that's the one I appreciate a lot more, actually. Overlord, I think, was a great execution. Annihilation, I will appreciate more over time. But also, I am willing to concede, because if you're talking about horror, Overlord is more pure horror than Annihilation.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm okay with Overlord, because that is just pretty good. I mean, it's horror sci-fi, but that's where I there's a lot more to Annihilation, but we're talking about horror. If a horror fan's hey, I want to watch something. What's a good horror movie? Overlord is an easy recommend. And it's not all about recommending. I'm not saying what should we recommend or what should we want people to watch. I mean, I think about hey, what's an important film of this year? I still think Overlord's important if you're thinking about pure horror.
And if you gave me a list of what movie, if all the horror movies I watched all year, it's which you get to watch one and that's it. I would do Overlord, because that's the one I enjoy the most. I had the most fun watching it.
Yeah, I think too, if you gave me a list and you said recommend, because a lot of the times I have to go see, I end up just seeing movies by myself, because Julie's busy and doesn't have time. So out of her, if she's well, which one of these should I really see? And it's the stuff we've seen this year that she hadn't seen, I'd be well, probably Overlord.
Yeah.
We saw Annihilation together. I think Annihilation's a movie that maybe Blade Runner-ish will grow over time. Because more obscure sci-fi stuff does take a while to sink in sometimes, especially if it doesn't end in a very neat bow tying, crowd pleasing fashion. As opposed to Overlord is a straight movie through and through that I don't think anybody can come out. I guess people come out hating it, but I don't think anybody can come out and say I didn't get what I was.
They can't say it was poorly made or constructed or anything.
But you could come out with, as much as I love Mandy, I just can't nominate that as my best of the year, because it is such a. It's a lot to digest. There's a lot there. The ending of the movie is very, as much as I love it, it's so out there that to me it'd be hard to recommend that as the best, because there's just so much that goes on in there. And the first hour, is hard. It does take to get the first time watching it's okay, but the second time would drag because you've already seen it. So
And it's a lot of tone and mood
Yeah.
setting and setting things up, and then it really kicks into action once.
it does deliver, but it just the hour that you take to get through that, I've already seen so much better stuff in.
So like,
Overlord.
yeah, once you reach the Cheddar Goblin on, you're like, okay.
yeah,
So Overlord for best film, Haunting Hill House for best TV show, right? Horror
Yeah.
TV show. And then we're not covering general action because there's like we come at night or something that
There's stuff we
none of
haven't
us saw.
seen.
You know, there's so real quick. Did anybody have a top movies of the year, general movies of the year list?
yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I give. If you want to do yours real quick,
Okay, so me, you know, normally I maybe pick films that like will maybe grow over time or whatever, but Mission Impossible Fallout, you know.
Yeah.
I said to my wife, I was like, yeah, that's my favorite movie of the year. She said, every time a Mission Impossible comes out, it's your favorite movie of the year. I'm like, well, kind of. Mad Max and Mission Impossible tied that year when they came out.
Yeah.
And then the favorite is probably second. Suspiria's up there. Sorry to Bother You. Phenomenal. That's on Hulu. Then this starts getting a little messy, but that's probably some of my top ones. Widows, I think, is really good thriller. Everybody should at least check that out once.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Blockers, I love that film. You know, that's as far as pure comedy, that's the highest comedy I have in here. Game Night was really good as well. I'd have that a little bit lower. I thought Avengers Infinity War was very good. An incredible achievement with everything they had going on.
Yeah.
It's just an entertaining film that moves really fast. Black Panther was also very good, of course. Spider-Man was good. I didn't know if I had Spider-Man too far. I like Solo a whole lot. And then Annihilation, Overlord, I started, kind of going into more of the horror. But that just shows you kind of how much higher some of these other films are, even than, say, Annihilation are for me. Black Klansman, too. I missed that on here. That was very good as well. So, yeah, Mission Impossible was my favorite film of the year. I think that I watch many, many times over.
Yeah.
And Suspiria is like right there. That's top three. Favorite I loved. It may change when I watch more too, but and Sorry to Bother You. That's an easy recommend you can watch right now on Hulu for free if you have that.
So like mine is just all like mainstream. This is my non-horror top 5, but this is just like my favorite movies outside the horror genre. Mine are all very mainstream because that's what I've watched this year. So obviously Mission Impossible Fallout, like that to me was the best movie of the year. I mean, it was just stunt after stunt, set piece after set piece, all executed like awesomely.
Phenomenal.
You can watch it over and over.
Yeah, you can watch it over and over again.
Yeah.
I would take, one of those. I would take that over Infinity War any day of the week because to me it just like there's something to be said about like a 50-year-old guy, like or even older than that, just doing some of this stuff that's just like it's pretty awesome. And just to see that, and they had to keep upping it.
Yeah.
So like the next movie they're going to do more.
In the commentary, he said at the end, at the premiere, I think at the premiere of this one, McQuarrie, they were talking about how much Tom Cruise pushes him. And at the end of it, Tom Cruise leaned over as the credits rolled the premiere. He said, I think we can do better.
Yeah. So like I think that's what's exciting about this is because like while it is an established franchise, like you just continue to get
They're not satisfied to
No,
rest on
they-
their laurels.
they-
That's all
Yeah.
Tom Cruise. He pushes everybody.
Yeah. And then like he learns everything. So
Yeah.
like what you see is usually him doing it. It's not somebody. It's not a CGI,
Yeah.
suit and you got big Hulk
Again,
hands
you
on.
can't get that anywhere else,
No.
really.
Ant-Man and the Wasp. I just really love that. It was a nice palate cleanser from Infinity War. I really just enjoy kind of stuff like that because it was fun. It had a nice, it had actually a pretty enjoyable female lead in it. I really enjoyed the Wasp in it. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is my opinion the best Spider-Man movie they've made.
I love that movie.
I think it's the best. I think it shows what Spider-Man can be when you don't have the Avengers crap all tied into it and you bog it down with all that stuff. I really enjoyed it. Bumblebee.
To be fair, they only made one Spider-Man movie that has been quote unquote bogged down. by
Well,
that. So,
but
yeah.
this is like the Spider-Man that's like I feel like, although it is animated, but it really embraced the Spider-Man role and it made it because it wasn't like I'm a skateboarder and I'm awesome and
Yeah.
I'm Andrew Garfield and Mel Model and then Tobey Maguire was too nerdy, but which I still like him. But then Bumblebee because I really enjoyed it. It was a nice like
Bumblebee tuna.
it was just kind of a nice. Again, I'm going to use this a palate cleanser on what was the old Transformers. I wish it made more of the box office because it was a really good movie. But kind of like I think William used this analogy because he heard it from somewhere else too. It's like when you give somebody spaghetti with ketchup on it for long enough, and you finally give them like good spaghetti with a nice sauce, they want the spaghetti or they want the ketchup spaghetti. And that's kind of feel about this because it's like that movie. This movie's really good. It's what they wanted originally. But it's kind of like with
Or if you keep bringing them the spaghetti with ketchup on it, when you finally bring them spaghetti with sauce, they're like, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm not
Yeah.
eating that.
And I feel like this is the X-Men First Class of the franchise, or for the Transformers franchise. Like, it's going to be a little
bit lower grossing.
a little bit
reboot.
lower grossing, but it grounded it more. It was a much better movie than what they'd released in a long time. So hopefully it will get a sequel, and they can kind of, turn that franchise around. And then my last one would be Deadpool 2. I really enjoyed that. I did enjoy it more than the first, but of course I had to find an X movie in my top 5. So
Yeah, like,
I thought he wasn't. When he walked in today, I said, "Sorry, Derek, no X movie's going to get in the top 5 because there wasn't any." And they were like, "Deadpool came out." Oh yeah.
Oh, and just one other thing. My other favorite TV show, BoJack Horseman, continually just the best TV show on television. It's been that way since season 1, so I look forward to that, obviously, this year.
Yeah, so I didn't really do a top 5 outside of horror, but I really loved Mission Impossible Fallout, Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse were ones that, mainstream movies, but I really enjoyed those.
And it's okay to have, mainstream movies.
Yeah, in Spider-Verse, I just really came away from, loving that and wanting to watch it again. And,
Yeah, I would definitely buy that.
Beyond the stuff that we talked about, looking forward to Glass.
Yeah.
That's coming out soon.
Yeah.
The M. Night Shyamalan sequel. Looking forward to Us, which is the new Jordan Peele movie in March.
Yeah, that looks really
Just real quick before we close this out and end, Pet Cemeteries in April. So is the Hellboy reboot, which I'm a little bit more questionable on. The Curse of La Llorona, which is the kind of interesting looking ghost story about La Llorona, which is I think I don't know if it's specifically Mexican culture or South American, but it's something that's actually a real cultural thing. Brightburn is that James Gunn produced Evil Superman as a child movie. Godzilla comes out in May. There's a Child's Play remake that nobody really asked for. The Grudge remake that's coming out. New Annabelle movie. The New Mutants is an X-Men movie coming out in
I've heard
August.
that might not even come out.
Scary Stories
Which
Tell in
I'm
the Dark.
really looking forward to that.
Guillermo del Toro produced. Really excited for that. It Chapter 2 is in September. Zombieland 2 is in October. Are You Afraid of the Dark is in October. And then there's other stuff like 3 from Hell and some other movies that are still The Lighthouse, the new movie from the director Robert Eggers who made The Witch. It has Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. Looks interesting. So some movies that were coming out in 2019 to look forward to that we will
And all the films we don't even know is coming that will just drop on Netflix.
Yeah,
and that it's just
streaming.
that's streaming, and you're like, okay, this is one of my favorite films of the year. So it's a wild time for movies now because you can't know what's coming out almost.
Yeah, because nobody knew about Bird Box until right before it came out.
Cam turned out to be one of my favorites of the year, and it was something I really had not heard anything about.
It was a festival. I heard about festivals, but it was months and months out from
Another
release.
show that I would recommend for best horror aside from Honey House is the Joe Bob's horror specials.
I mean, stuff like that's it's stuff.
Yeah.
Even though this isn't technically horror, it's still paranormal. It's BuzzFeed and solved, and it's really enjoyable. It just I like the mood setters. I feel like Joe Bob is probably a good mood setter for
great.
horror.
It's
One of
stuff.
those Netflix true crime series,
Yeah.
like An Innocent Man I watched recently.
Barry on HBO also really awesome.
Yeah, I wanna watch
Vice
that,
Principal
the Bill
season
Hader.
2 was great. So
A lot of stuff's out there. So yeah, so
thanks for listening this year and watching. For those that are watching and watching our stuff.
and keeping an eye out.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so if you want to leave us a review on iTunes, that helps out. You can also leave comments for us on social media, on YouTube. We always enjoy seeing feedback there. You can send us an email at podcast@housevideostore.com. Follow all the stuff we're doing at the website at housevideostore.com. There's links here to all the social media accounts. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all those places to see upcoming things on shorts that we're working on projects we're working on, all the stuff like that. And if you want to find us specifically on the internet, I am on Instagram at @TheWilliamCaps.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at MetaWorldDerek.
I'm at Blevins Sean on Twitter.
And that'll wrap up this episode of the House by VSR podcast. Thanks for listening.
House by the